Welcome to the Stronger Together podcast brought to you by Sandpoint Strength and Conditioning. I'm your coach, Kenny Marquardt. Today, I'm proud to bring you me. It's going to be a quick, maybe not so quick, but an episode. I'm going to do a solo cast here, talk through a cardiometrics guide that I released. I actually did write this and bring it to you myself about a month or so ago. I think I put it out there maybe a little less than that. But in any event, I want to talk through that, why it's important, and that is what you get this week. So, ready to go. All right, so I want to ask you something. I want you to actually sit with it for a second before you keep listening. Do you want to be at the table when your grandkids have kids? Not just alive, capable, present, sharp, like the person at the head of the table who everyone's still like glad is around. I think most of us assume that we will be there. We assume that if we're doing okay now, we'll be okay later. We don't really sit down and ask ourselves, what am I actually doing to make sure that that happens? And I think that like we all, if you're listening to this, you probably work out. You might work out at the gym, my gym, and you are probably doing some things, but I don't know how closely we're paying attention to it like some of other, metrics that are more easily demonstrable. And most of the time, when people think about fitness and health, they think about the things they can see. They think about the number on the scale. They think about how they look. They think about whether their genes fit, whether they're strong enough to do the things they want to this season. And those things matter. We talk about them all the time, but today I want to go deeper. I want to talk about the things that determine whether you're actually alive in 30 years. Not fit, not lean, alive, breathing, present for your family. And so for that, we have to talk about cardiovascular health. And we're going to specifically talk about 5 metrics that are, according to the data, the strongest predictors of disease and early death that we have access to. This is not an opinion. It's not like some bro science Instagram stuff. It's actual research. And I'm going to walk you through each and every one of them, what they are, why they matter, how to measure them, what you should be shooting for, and how to move the needle. It's honestly one of the most important conversations I think we can have. And I, admittedly, am a strength athlete. I love moving barbells. I love lifting weights. If I had to pick one or the other, strength versus cardio, I would pick strength all day long just based on what I enjoy. But as I get older, as I start to consider the fact that my son, I would love if he had some kids, and if they had some kids, and they had some kids, and I want to be around for as long as I possibly can with that. That's why I've really started to hone in on the cardiovascular metrics, because that is what's going to help me live a long life, while strength is going to be what helps me live a good life. Before I get into the specific metrics, I want to go even a little bit further on the context of why we're having the conversation. So again, as I just said, I love strength stuff. I think that that's just sexy. It makes you look good. It makes you feel good. It makes, it's fun. Again, that's me. That's my predisposition or preference. And right now, strength is having a moment. It's awesome. I love it. Everybody's deadlifting. People are talking about muscle mass and bone density and functional movements in ways that they weren't 5 years ago. In fact, I used to have to talk people into strength training and how it was actually the thing that was the most important thing that they could be doing. And now, while that was a genuinely a good shift, and it's been great to see that happening. And we've been I've been a part of that conversation for 15 years now. I want to say it plainly that moving well doesn't mean anything if your heart gives out. And your cardiovascular system is the infrastructure that makes everything else possible. It's how your organs get blood. It's how your muscles get oxygen during a workout and during recovery. And it's how your brain stays sharp. When the cardiovascular system starts to fail, and for a lot of people it fails quietly over the years and without a symptom, everything else is going to go with it. And the part that I think that should concern all of us is that blood pressure is called the silent killer for a reason. Most people with elevated blood pressure feel completely fine. There are no symptoms, there are no warning signs, no gradual decline you can point to. For a lot of people, the first symptom of heart disease is the actual heart attack. The first symptom of a stroke is the stroke. That could mean no warning, no time to get your affairs together, no goodbyes to your family. And I'm not trying to say that to be dramatic. I'm saying it because these things are largely preventable. The metrics are measurable. They respond to training. They respond to nutrition. They respond to sleep, stress management. Oftentimes it is even with all those other things, people do need a medicinal intervention. Also very powerful tools at our disposal in that arena these days now too. So all that to say, you have a lot of control over this, maybe more than you even realize, but only if you're paying attention. And again, like to rehash that, what I'm trying to tell you is, yes, love strength. I'm going to keep repeating that because it's just worth admitting. But cardio is so important as well, so that You are not laying up or laying down, looking up at the sky thinking, holy crap, it's happening. That dumb idiot on the podcast talking about how the first symptom of a heart attack or heart disease is a heart attack. This is it. I'm going out this way. You can pay attention to it. You can learn about it. You can look at yourself. And specifically for what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about 5 metrics that will help you not get yourself in that situation. First metric, we're going to finally get to the numbers here. Resting heart rate. This is the simplest one. Also, it's one of the most underappreciated. Your resting heart rate is exactly what it sounds like. It's how many times your heart beats per minute when you're at rest. So this is not during a workout. It's not when you've had your coffee. It's when you're relaxed, settled, and not really doing a whole lot of anything. A heart that's fit and efficient, and a cardiovascular system that's fit and efficient, doesn't need as many beats as often to do its job. It's stronger. Each beat pumps more blood, so it runs at lower RPMs. And a heart that's struggling, whether because of poor fitness, high stress, poor sleep, inflammation, or all of the above, has to work harder to keep up. It's just always running hot. What I love about resting heart rate is that it gives you a window into your entire autonomic nervous system, not just your heart. It reflects your sleep quality. It reflects your stress load, your recovery, your inflammation levels. And it's a remarkably convenient check-in for how your whole system is doing. How to use it practically. If your resting heart rate is chronically elevated, meaning it's always high, week after week, it's a signal that something in your lifestyle needs an overhaul or is out of whack or is plainly just out of whack. So all those other things I mentioned a second ago, sleep, stress, fitness, alcohol, all of it's on the table to look at. Here's what I find even more useful is that if your resting heart rate is normally around 58 and one morning you wake up and it's 68, something has changed and your body's telling you something. Maybe you're fighting something off. Maybe you're overtrained. Maybe you drink more than you should have and your body's dealing with that. But the acute spike is a weather vane. So use it. All right, so what is high? What should you be shooting for? Normal, like clinically, is 60 to 100. In my opinion, that's high. That's a high range. Normal isn't really the goal here. Longevity is living as long as we can to see our grandkids have kids. Maybe that might be a little extreme, but see our kids have kids and their kids have kids. That's what we're trying to do. And so we're going to have to push a little bit harder. So the data shows that mortality risk starts ticking up significantly at 70 beats a minute. So if your resting heart rate is 70 beats a minute, that's where we're starting to say that you're going to notice, well, you have a higher risk of dying earlier than others. At 80, that goes up significantly. So ideally, you're under 70. But elite athletes, especially endurance athletes, actually definitely endurance athletes, because the more powerful athletes, they may have a harder time because they just have more of a system of service. But elite endurance athletes often sit in the 40s and below. I've heard quite a few cases of where that might even be below. And that's the ceiling. That's the ceiling you should probably be shooting for. I wouldn't aim for lower than that. Under 60 is definitely achievable for most people with just consistent training, which, not to get too far ahead, but we are going to talk about what training should look like to optimize these things at the end. So how do you measure it? Well, if you got a watch, even though I love to abuse those things as far as what they can and cannot do and how much people extrapolate too much information on them, your watch is probably doing it already. Most fitness watches are going to be accumulating your heart rate data while you're asleep, which is the best time to measure it, at rest. So you got no movement, no stimulus, hopefully, no stress response. So yeah, if you have any sort of fitness watch, you can probably find this metric in a menu, like in a health related menu. If you don't have a watch, do this early in the morning before you have coffee. Sit down, find a quiet place. Actually, sit down, lay down, whatever. Clear your head, and then take your pulse for a minute. You can definitely do the math. You can take it for 10 seconds and multiply by 6. It's just not going to be as accurate. If you cannot count up to 60, then I would probably do the math there anyways. And that's it. So how do you improve it? Well, a couple levers. One, sleep. It's probably the biggest one for most people. Consistently poor sleep is going to keep this number elevated no matter what. Stress management is right there in a close second. And then on the training side, the way to improvement is long, slow distance work. So zone 2 cardio for 30 to 45 minutes is the most direct training input for improving resting heart rate over time. Not sprinting, not high intensity intervals, slow, aerobic, sustained effort. That's it. Okay, that's resting heart rate. Heart rate recovery, the second metric. This is one I think most people have never really heard of, which is unfortunate because it's one of the most powerful indicators of cardiovascular fitness that exists. Now, here's what it is. You exercise hard, like real hard. Hard. you get your heart rate dang near max and you stop. In fact, sorry, let me pause for a second and say, I've had a lot of people do this and I find it's very hard to get somebody that high. Really well-trained athletes can do this, and the mechanism has to be appropriate because the discomfort is just so great that most people have a very hard time pushing themselves to get it that high. So for whatever that's worth, just know. The point, though, is still to get it up near its max. As for a max, I would probably just, if you don't know what it is, then I would use a 220 minus your age will give you a rough estimate on what that max is. So if you're 40 years old, you do 220 minus 40, and your max heart rate is, let's call it 80. That's the math, but let's just call it 80 there. So you get your heart rate, you exercise as hard as you can, probably not for more than a couple minutes at the most, because then it's going to just taper off because you're going to have to pace it. But so a couple minutes of really, really, really hard work, and then you're going to get it near its max and you stop. You sit your butt down or lay down. I don't care. One of those two, but you're not wandering around. You sit down and you stop exercising. You stop moving. Then at some point, the clock should start right after you stop exercising, but you are going to rest for a minute, like hard rest. Like you're going to lay down for a minute, and then you're going to see where your heart rate is after 1 minute. Your heart rate recovery is how many beats your heart rate drops in that 60-second period. That makes sense? Hopefully it does. You can't answer me. But so if your heart rate max is 180, and at the end of that minute after you stop exercising, you are at 140, your heart rate recovery is 40. The drop is a reflection of how well your parasympathetic nervous system can bring your body back down from a state of high alert to not quite homeostasis, but normal. A faster recovery isn't just like more comfortable, because if you go that hard and you can turn it all the way back down in just a short period of time, like that's going to feel better. You are just going to physically feel better. It's also very strongly associated with living a longer life. Now, you may have noticed this in the gym. Two people finish the same hard piece of exercise. One of them breathes really, really hard for 30 seconds, and then they look okay, and they're ready to go again. And the other one is hunched over many, many minutes later, maybe for hours, their hands on their knees, and they're trying to find somewhere to lay down and die. The gap isn't just their fitness. It's their heart rate recovery, which can be a mechanism of the fitness, but it's the heart rate recovery that makes the biggest difference there. And it matters. I want you to listen to this pretty closely here. This number should stop you in your tracks. Every 10 beat reduction in your heart rate recovery score, meaning your heart rate drops fewer beats in that minute, is associated with a 13% higher risk of cardiovascular event and a 9% increase in all-cause mortality. So every 10 beats. And those are not small numbers that I just talked about. So what should you be shooting for? A drop of greater than 20 beats per minute is considered healthy. If you drop less than 12 beats, you have double the mortality risk of someone who drops more than 20. I can pretty unequivocally say that more is always better. A higher heart rate recovery is always better. I'm not aware of an example that would be too much. Especially if you're hitting the numbers, like you're hitting a real max. So let's see. How do you improve this? And it can be very clearly improved. I've watched this. I've done this for many people. Very specifically, I'm actually still working with these guys. There's a couple fighters in our gym. These athletes, so the way that their sport works is they have 3-minute rounds with a minute rest. And it's very, very, very important for them to be able to work really, 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 really hard and then recover and then to go do another effort of really, really, really hard for a couple minutes. So this is like the metric for their sport. As a byproduct, they will probably live a really long time too. So how do you improve it? You build a base of long, slow distance cardio first. So this is going to be a repeated thing I'll say for a lot of this is that you are going to spend a lot of time doing long, slow distance cardio. You're going to build the efficiency of the heart and build a big, big, big aerobic base. Once you get comfortable doing 20 to 30 minutes of that at a conversational pace, and you're good and you've got that level of fitness, which probably most of you listening to this do, then that's where at least 2 days a week of hard interval training, 4 minutes of very hard effort, followed by 4 minutes of very hard rest will be, and you repeat that 4 times. It's, I think it's called a Norwegian something or other. I'm not sure I made that up, but I know it's a protocol. But you do 4 rounds, 4 minutes on, 4 minutes rest. Very, 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 very hard. That's going to train that same thing I just talked about. So you're going to work hard and you're going to recover. You work hard to recover. That 4 minute period of time allows your body to get to that max And the 4 minutes is going to be sufficient enough where you will definitely get a full recovery that you can go again. So you're just going to train your body. The whole point of exercise and training is that your body learns how to adapt to the stresses or stimuluses that are put upon it. So this protocol would be something that would very specifically help that. Now, if you're at our gym, we don't do that 2 or 3 times a week. That's fine. Like, that's the work rest intervals and allowing your body to recover between rounds and focusing hard on the recovery is what will help as well. But if you are only going to do this and only trying to work on your heart rate recovery, that would be a great protocol to do it. I just think that might be a little bit extreme. So again, the points being work really hard, rest really hard, which sounds dumb, but it's true. Like, people rest, they're dumbass coaches from some sport earlier on in their life told them really bad information about how to rest. Just sit down. I don't know why everybody wants to wander around with their hands over their head. And actually, I do know why, because everybody's basketball or whatever coach told them that resting with their hands on their knees was a poor recovery position and they should walk it off, which is horrible advice. In fact, I can probably link you to it. I can put a link in the show notes or something for that study. But there's a study that has shown that you should actually rest with your hands on your knees and stop moving. Unless you're allowed to sit down, then sit down. Anyways, that protocol, 4 on, 4 off, times 4 has been shown to make a significant difference in how quickly your heart rate drops after hard effort. It's just training your nervous system to recover faster and not just your muscles. So again, to make a final point on that, and this actually relates a little bit to the heart rate the resting heart rate thing, is knowing that like our bodies are very well equipped to handle massively stressful situations. And they're also very well equipped to handle very restful situations. And to delineate the difference between those two and let your body know when it's hard time to work and when it's time to rest will go far and away beyond the things that I'm even talking about here with cardiovascular stuff. Because I think there's so many people. There's a really good book on this by Robert Sapolsky called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. And it's basically about how we've put ourselves in this constant state of work with no rest. And so our bodies are just constantly pumping out cortisol. They're constantly having a high heart rate, and there's no recovery. So again, that's why I'm not only a psychopath in the exercise recovery sphere. I think resting in general is a good way to tell your body, hey, it's okay. We can settle down now. Now we can recover. Now we can repair tissues. We can do all the things we need to do to live longer. Okay, heart rate variability. Next one, the third metric of the 5. This is my favorite one to talk about, and it's also the one that frustrates me probably more than anything. The fitness world and watches and whatnot have made a tremendous mess of this. And I'm going to tell you what it is before I get on my soapbox. Heart rate variability is not your heart rate. It's the variation in time between individual heartbeats. So your heart might beat 60 times a minute, but those beats are not perfectly evenly spaced. There are very tiny differences, like milliseconds differences between each beat. Those tiny, tiny, tiny differences tell us something profound about how ready your nervous system is to handle stress. High variability means your heart is responsive. Your parasympathetic nervous system, the part that calms you down, helps you recover, keeps you balanced. It's active and it's working well. You're ready. You're very adaptable is how you should think about that. Low variability means the opposite. Your system is locked in on fight or flight mode. You're stressed, you're overloaded, you're under-recovered, and you're not ready. In fact, one of the major wearable companies actually calls their HRV metric your readiness score, which is honestly a super accurate way to frame it. As long as you're measuring it correctly, and this is where things go hugely sideways. My problem with most people and how they get their HRV is that most people are getting an HRV score from a watch on their wrist or a ring on their finger, which is terrible. Don't. Those devices are not even close to accurate enough to measure the millisecond variation between heartbeats. The watch is too far from your heart. The ring is even further from your heart. And it's measuring at random times throughout the day and not under consistent, controlled conditions. The result is a number that's so variable and so inconsistently measured that you're essentially making, and then therefore people are making decisions based on noise. And people do make decisions based on this crap. It drives me nuts. I've seen people skip their workouts because their watch said their readiness was so low. They were ready to train. They woke up feeling fine, and their body was fine, but they outsourced their judgment to a device that wasn't equipped to make that decision. That's totally backwards. If you want to measure HRV at least closer to properly, you need a chest strap, and you have to take this immediately upon waking up at the very same time every morning and under the very same conditions. There's an app and a strap called Morpheus, and that is far and away the gold standard for recreational users, and it's quite worth it if you want to take this seriously. I have spent a lot of time learning from a guy named Joel Jameson, who kind of was the godfather of HRV in the United States. I actually had him on another podcast that I hosted. I no longer do, and that was for Two Brain Business. You can probably look that up. It's what in the world was it called? I can't even remember the name of the podcast. Coaches Collective, Strength Coach Collective is what it was called. And you can look up Joel Jameson, Jaieson. That was, I think, a good podcast. And he's, like I said, the godfather of that. I've done some certifications with him, spent some time with him, did a live with it. Like, I've spent a lot of time. He's a smart dude, and that's where some of my rage comes from. But he is the one that came up with that Morpheus device, the strap, and the app that goes along with it. And those lunatics are about as crazy as you can get as far as measuring and understanding HRV. So if you want to know that number and you trust me and that your watch is as dumb as it can get, or your ring is just another stupid thing, go get a device or go get a strap. What I found, I don't wear that anymore. I actually just don't use it. But I found that by wearing it for a couple of weeks, I really got a better understanding of how certain things affect me. Training, sleep, alcohol, certain foods. There was a lot of things that would would change my HRV, and I just kind of kept a log of those things and was able to know. So like I said, I don't currently check my HRV every morning. I just go by feel, which is I think what most people should do. But if you want to know more, get a strap. And also, even if it says your HRV, I'm getting off track on what I want to keep doing through metrics, but even if you get a low score and you are taking it appropriately and you feel like that's correct, it doesn't mean you just throw the training day away. You just can, so the Morpheus does this for you, is that it will lower your heart rate zones for the training that you are doing for that day. So that's it. Even if it's in the garbage, if you have the lowest HRV you've ever seen for yourself, which I'll talk about right now, what that number should be, it doesn't mean you forego training altogether. It just means you turn it down a little bit. So what should you be shooting for? There's actually no universal number here. HRV is massively individual. What matters is you and your baseline and your trend over time. Higher, though, is better. Consistent is even more better. So if you see a meaningful drop in your personal baseline over a week or two, something in your life is out of whack and needs some change. And that could be your training load, could be sleep, could be alcohol, stress, something. I noticed that actually I would get a big drop in HRV if I were about to get sick or if I had just traveled. So if you use it correctly, it's a powerful tool. But if you use it incorrectly, it's just anxiety in a wearable form. That's my soapbox and educational piece on HRV. Very valuable. That's why it's in this list, but also only valuable if you measure it and use it in the right way. All right. VO2 max, the king. If I had to pick one single number that told me the most about someone's long-term health outlook, this is it. Your VO2 max. Your VO2 max is the maximum rate at which your cardiovascular and respiratory systems can deliver oxygen to your muscles during peak effort. It's the ceiling of your aerobic capacity. It's how hard your engine can run and how efficiently it can do that. And as it turns out, this number predicts how long you're going to live better than almost anything else that we have access to. And here's the data behind it. And there's more, but here's the big one. This is a study of 122,000 people. They had their VO2 max tested and then tracked. They were tracked. These people were tracked over time. The people in the top 2.3% of VO2 max performance had five times lower risk of all-cause mortality compared to the people in the bottom 25%. 5 times. Not 20% lower, not double, 5 times. The best part, and what I find even like the most compelling part and most motivating, is that the biggest single improvement in mortality risk does not come from going from good to great. It comes from going from bad to not bad. From the bottomest bracket to the next one up. That single move, just getting off of the bottom of the chart, cuts your risk of dying in half. Double. And that's like very accessible. It's not a number reserved for elite athletes. We're not looking for the top of the podium here. We're looking to just go from like off the couch to walking around the block. VO2 max has been shown to be a better predictor of mortality than whether or not you smoke. which is typically the things that like life insurance companies ask you. If they were smart, which I'm sure that there's resources and problems in this, they would just test your dang VO2 max. Instead, they ask you whether or not you're a smoker or whatever. But that VO2 max number is literally better than smoking. It's better than whether you have diabetes. It's better than your age, which is wild. Think about that. Your aerobic capacity predicts your lifespan more accurately than smoking or even your age, period. That's how important this is. So how do you measure this? And unfortunately, this is kind of a pain in the ass too. Like I said, life insurance would probably be doing this if they could, but it's just a pain. A real test involves a mask that measures exhaled gases in either a treadmill or a bike or something that continues adding resistance or going faster until you physically cannot continue. On the short end, it's 10 minutes of terribleness. Actually, it's like probably, if it's 10 minutes, probably 6 of those are terrible. The initial 4 aren't that bad. If you want the most accurate number, that's how you can get it. But you can get a super solid estimate without any of that because these things are going to correlate. You can run a mile as fast as you can. You can row a 2,000 meter effort as hard as you can. You can go, as long as you go all out for roughly 10 minutes, maybe slightly longer, you can typically find a VO2 max calculator and get a meaningful estimate. And honestly, the exact number matters less than the trend. I mean, you might want to bolster your self-confidence or pat yourself on the back if you think it's really high and you want to go use a mask in a cart. That's great. But if you just use one of those tests and then you test yourself again and you test yourself again, and you just keep noticing that trend, and if you're moving in the right direction, or if you're in some elite numbers, which again are good numbers for those sort of events online, then you're doing fine. Once again, my friend the watch will also estimate this for you. But heads up, it's based on some weird data that may or may not be valid. It's actually typically based on running data. Some watches will use a bike as well, but again, just know that your watch is going to be extrapolating or estimating based on something you may not do very often, or it may be based on effort that is longer. Like you might be running a couple of miles and it might be based on the 2 mile thing, as though like with the 1 mile run or the 2K row, like those again are not going to give you your actual VO2 max. Neither is your watch, but they are the same in that if you keep your eyes on it, you keep paying attention to it, it's probably going to tell you what you need. In fact, if you're even paying attention to this, you're probably doing better than most, which again, like I said, the best improvements for people are about going from like the worst to slightly not as worse. So if you start paying attention and tracking this thing, you're probably doing fine. So how do you improve this? Well, if you're in the poor or very poor range, you just need to start moving. Please do not overthink this. Don't go all David Goggins and start getting up at 3 a.m. and trying to run 30 miles before you go to work. Totally not necessary. You just need to start moving. Consistent aerobic work. 30 to 45 minutes at a conversational pace 3 to 4 times a week is going to probably get you exactly where you need to go to make a massively meaningful improvement. The bar's crazy low for that, and the gains are fast. So that's great news. If you are in the middle of the chart and you want to live longer, keep the steady state work. A couple days a week, push a little bit harder. And then 1 session a week, you go for that like all out replicating a test type of it. So 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, something hard. Row 2K, run a mile. That's going to tell your body. It's like the sharpening of the blade. I've been using this analogy in a lot in my comparisons or talks about this stuff, but like the bigger you build the base, the stronger and sharper you can make the blade. So it's still got to be based off of long, slow distance and then intervals once a week. If you are, however, quite fit already and you want to optimize, we go back to that Norwegian or Viking or whatever protocol. I'm actually pretty certain it's called Norwegian. 4 minutes of hard effort, 4 minutes of rest, repeated 4 times. You do that 4 times. Sorry, not 4 times. Don't do that. I'm going to say that again so you don't screw this up. 4 minutes of very hard effort, 4 minutes of rest, repeated 4 times. Do that up to twice a week. It's similar. I know I talked about that with the heart rate recovery stuff. This happens to be the most researched and most demonstrably effective protocol for increasing VO2 max in already trained individuals. It's hard, it works, and if you add it alongside your steady state work, give it a handful, 8 to 12 weeks or so, you're going to see meaningful change. Again, if you're in the gym here, we don't do that. We do the more closely, like Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays currently in our training cycles, we're doing the intervals of 10 to 15 minutes with rest in there. So that's a little bit more specifically suited for a direct adaptation for VO2 max. It may not be the most optimized for increasing VO2 max, but the difference, in my opinion, is very negligible. And the issue that we run into is time, because 4 sets, 4 minutes of work, 4 minutes of rest. That's a long training session. And what's very hard about that test for people that can become bored or monotonous in their training, or feel monotonous in their training, is that it's hard to find something that you can do that hard and also do it safely, unless it's on a bike, a rower, or running efforts. Again, if they're good runners, it's just, one of those things. It's challenging to do safely with the mixed modal types of conditioning that we do without breaking people. So that's one of the reasons we don't do it. All right, blood pressure. I want to spend a little more time on this one because I think it gets dismissed more than it should. I think that it's not a secret. We've all been told that blood pressure matters. We've all had it checked at the doctor. But I also don't think that most people understand how serious this number, or how quietly dangerous an elevated blood pressure can be. The reason it's called the silent killer is that high blood pressure almost never produces symptoms. You can walk around for years, feel completely fine, go to work out, live your life, while your blood pressure is quietly damaging your arteries, your heart, your kidneys, and your brain. You'll feel nothing until you do. As I mentioned in the intro, for most people, or for a lot of people, the first symptom of the heart attack is the heart attack. The first symptom of the stroke is the stroke. There's no warning. There's no ramp up. There's no gradual decline you can feel coming. And that's, like I said before, that's just like, it's a quick exit. That's not what you want. Here are the numbers. Every 20-point increase in your systolic blood pressure, the first number, approximately doubles your risk of death from heart disease or stroke. Every 10-point increase in your diastolic, or the second number, is the same thing. It's not a gradual slope. That's a cliff. And a lot of people are standing closer to the edge of that cliff than they recognize. That should be scary. I think a lot of us have a lot of anxieties about a lot of things in life, and this is not one of them. And it probably should be. So you're welcome. So what should you be shooting for? 120/80 is the standard, or you can go below that. I know that there are times too low is too low, but lower than, or 120/80 or a little lower. Significantly above that is something you should absolutely address. It's not just like, oh, well, I guess I have high blood pressure. So how do you measure it? I'm not a doctor. I probably should have opened this episode with that. And if you thought I was a doctor, you are sorely mistaken. But go get it measured by a professional. That's what you should go do. Go talk to a doctor. Like the white coat syndrome thing, that's real. I've had it happen to me. I actually still kind of do. So I usually have to have them take it a couple times. And often it's because of, life's busy. You run into the office, whatever the situation may have, you may have to have them repeat it. But in any event, you should have a doctor do this. The home cuffs can be really inaccurate. There's sizing issues, technique problems, positioning errors, and some of the cuffs are just crappy. So get a real baseline, and then you can get a home cuff that should match what you found out by the professional. And then track your trends over time. So when you find that cuff that correlates or at least matches what your practitioner has, track your trends over time. So when you use the home cuff, sit quietly for 5 minutes first. Like I said, that white coat syndrome, I'm not sure how much of its nerves are at the doctor, or the fact that most people are running around all day and squeezing in appointments, and they go crashing through the door and their blood pressure seems to be higher. So you need to sit quietly for 5 minutes with your back supported, your feet flat on the floor, your legs uncrossed, and your arms supported at heart level. Then write the numbers down. A lot of the at-home cuffs will actually track them for you, but write the numbers down or keep track of them somehow, and then watch the trend, because the trend is what matters. Oh, sorry, I should clarify. The trend is not necessarily what matters, but it can be indicative of something else. The high numbers are what matters. But how do you improve it? For most people, consistent exercise and good nutrition will do a lot of the heavy lifting. No pun intended, but heavy lifting might not always be your best friend in this. The research is clear that actually aerobic training, this is kind of the point of the thing, is that aerobic training does a very good job of reducing blood pressure over time. For some people, a lot of people, reducing sodium can help. Not everyone. Managing stress and improving sleep, those all do contribute for sure. Unfortunately, genetics and pre-existing conditions are real factors here. Some people do everything right and still deal with elevated blood pressure. And if yours is consistently high, and even with exercise, there's not an excuse to say, well, I exercise all the time, I'm doing everything right, so screw that number. The number is what matters. Get in front of the doctor. Get the diagnostics done. And this is the one where you want professionals' eyes on it, for sure. Don't trust the fitness program. Again, I'm not going to talk you out of fitness. That's going to help for sure. Or it's going to be, as we've talked about all these other metrics, like fitness is a great answer, but there are some, including blood pressure, that might not be enough. Okay, that's it. Those are our 5 metrics. This took a lot longer than I thought. I'm at 45 minutes for this episode. Hopefully you're still hanging on, both in this episode and life, because that's the point of this one again. So 5 metrics: resting heart rate recovery, heart rate variability, VO2 max, and blood pressure. That's a fantastic cardiovascular picture. I'm not sure. Again, that's why I put this together. I don't think it gets better than that. I want to be transparent about how you approach this, because I don't want you walking away and thinking like, oh my God, I got to track everything all the time, and you give up on life because that's all that matters anymore. It's not the goal. The goal is awareness, and it's knowing where you stand. And because these numbers are the ones that are going to tell you the story of how long you're going to live here, not whether you PR'd your deadlift, not whether you hit your macros this week. These are the ones that the cardiovascular ones are the ones that'll tell you the things that will allow you to live a long life, that maybe you'll live a long time enough to PR your deadlifts again or whatever. But you can't do that when you're dead. Cardiovascular numbers are the ones that matter for the long game. Here's what I suggest. Pick one of these for this week and check in on it. Just one. If you ever watch, pull up your resting heart rate trend for the last month and see where you are. Or go nuts and test your heart rate recovery after your next workout or during your next workout. Just maybe let somebody know what you're doing, because otherwise, if you're at my gym and one of the coaches sees you just going ape shit on a freaking echo bike in the corner, we're going to wonder what you're up to. So just let us know. If you haven't had your blood pressure checked in a while, go get it done. Actually, you know what? I should have said this and that, but a lot of times I think they used to have them at the pharmacies. They'd have the cuffs in the thing. As far as I know, they should probably have those up and tuned, and they should be quality ones. So that could be a good opportunity. Or go talk to your doctor. Most people don't see their doctors enough as it is. And then you got to be your own advocate on that. So yeah, start with one. Get a number, write it down. And that single act of paying attention is going to be more valuable than any program I could put you on. Just paying attention. The best part about all this stuff is that 150 minutes of steady state aerobic exercise per week moves almost all of these numbers to healthy for most people. That's not a massive time commitment. It's 3 50-minute sessions or 5 30-minute sessions, which is what a lot of you are already doing when you show up to the gym. That's how we design through the week. And again, that's, because we do a lot of the interval stuff, it's not 3 50-minute sessions necessarily. But if Tuesdays and Thursdays are about 40, and then the remainder of the days are somewhere between 10 and 15, you're probably getting dang close, if not overshooting the mark. And then a lot of us are doing stuff outside of the gym as well. And so that scratches that itch for us. So we get over that 150 number. I want to end where I started. Do you want to be at that table when your kids have kids or your grandkids have kids? So picture sitting around a table surrounded by people who love you, watching your lineage live out their lives. That's worth paying attention to. That's worth showing up even on the days you don't feel like it. It's worth paying attention to numbers that seem boring until they're not. The version of you that makes it to that table isn't just lucky. That version of you made decisions day after day that most people were not. You stayed consistent. You paid attention. You showed up. That's what we're building. A better body's great, but we're not just building a better body. We want to live a longer life, and one that's actually worth living all the way to the end. I love this stuff. I'm a nerd. If you want to talk through where you are in any of these metrics, or if you want to build a specific plan around improving them, just ask me to chat. I'd love to. If you're not a part of the gym, just book a no-sweat intro at sandpointstrength.com. It's free. Chat through it all. Tell you where you're at or where I think you're at and how to fix it. Thanks for listening. I'll do this again next week. Well, we'll do this with somebody else next week. And why don't you go check your resting heart rate. See ya.